I want to be able to settle in and settle down and have exactly what I want. I want 5 bedrooms. I want to be close to the rest of the family. I want my kids enrolled in the same school. There's certain things that I want and certain things that I deserve to have. I like the routine that I'm developing with my kids. I really like it. You know, we've gotten more where we say prayers at night.
You and Mary, you guys feel like I'm giving you more by having you this far apart from each other.
Yes.
Really.
A car accident on a busy Utah highway has led to a massive lawsuit. That's putting one of the most private daughters from sister wives under intense public scrutiny. The case centers around a $225,000 legal demand, many unanswered questions, and a deadline that could completely change her life. What's your take on this situation? Do you think she's being treated unfairly, or is she facing the right consequences? Let us know what you think in the comments before we dive into all the details. I need to take a step back and figure out what comes next. I want a home where I feel secure, a place where everything finally clicks into place. I want plenty of room for everyone I care about, where children can flourish without worry, and where family brings peace instead of drama. I want my goals to feel achievable, not just wishful thinking. I want to keep our simple daily habits. The conversations late at night, the prayers we share, the small traditions that help us feel human again. We've experienced so much. And sometimes the separation feels like a challenge we must face. Do you believe it's all worthwhile? Absolutely. Are you sure? Yes. Hello everyone. Let's discuss this situation. We've been tracking the lawsuit against Ysabel Brown in Utah connected to that shocking 2023 crash. That has become a $225,000 legal crisis. For those who haven't heard, Ysabel Brown, daughter of Christine and Kody from Sister Wives, is dealing with a serious civil lawsuit in Utah related to a major car accident from 2023. Based on court papers, Ysabel was driving on a crowded section of interstate near Salt Lake City when she allegedly crashed into the back of another car during evening rush hour. What should have been a routine traffic slowdown turned into a multi-car pileup involving several vehicles. The person suing claims that Ysabel's vehicle started the chain reaction that caused injuries to her and others in the collision. This particular stretch of interstate is well known to Utah residents. It's a wide, high-speed road that handles commuters, large trucks, and tourists through an area famous for heavy traffic. Weather conditions can shift rapidly, winter visibility becomes poor, and the combination of speed limits and aggressive drivers often results in frequent multi-vehicle accidents. Highway patrol records indicate a pattern of chain reaction crashes at the exact location where Ysabel's accident occurred, including incidents that shut down traffic for hours and required emergency helicopters to transport injured people. In simple terms, this area already has a reputation for these types of accidents. According to the lawsuit, the plaintiff states that Ysabel followed too closely, couldn't brake in time, and slammed into the car ahead of her. That collision supposedly pushed the hit vehicle into another car, which then struck the plaintiff's vehicle. The woman filing the lawsuit says she was several cars behind in the chain, but still experienced the impact of the domino effect. Claiming it all began with Ysabel, her legal team argues she has suffered injuries, some of which might be permanent, as a direct result of the crash. Interestingly, the court documents don't specify exactly what injuries she received or how severe they are. This is typical at the beginning of civil lawsuits. Lawyers often keep medical information confidential while they gather more evidence. What we do know is that the plaintiff has structured her claim to suggest significant pain, lost income, and the need for continuing medical care. Her lawsuit indicates she may have crossed the legal requirements to pursue claims beyond basic insurance coverage, which is an important factor in Utah's no-fault insurance system. The timing is also significant. The accident happened in 2023, but the lawsuit wasn't filed until 2 years later, which still falls within Utah's 4-year deadline for negligence claims. This approach is calculated. Plaintiff attorneys often wait to fully understand the complete scope of injuries, expenses, and insurance settlements before filing their case. This delay can lead to witnesses forgetting details, evidence becoming harder to locate, and increased pressure to reach a settlement. Another interesting point is that the complaint doesn't mention any insurance companies. Typically, you would expect the defendant's insurance company to be named by this point, since insurance usually handles settlements or court judgments. In this situation, however, the lawsuit names only the plaintiff versus Ysabel Brown, with no insurance company listed as a co-defendant. This could mean several things. Maybe the insurance company hasn't been added yet, or they're challenging coverage, or they're handling the situation behind the scenes. Whatever the reason, it puts Ysabel in a vulnerable spot as the only person being sued. In her legal response to the lawsuit, Ysabel's attorneys acknowledged that she did rear-end the car in front of her, but they denied causing the plaintiff's injuries or being completely responsible for the chain reaction. They argue that Ysabel doesn't have enough information to determine how the plaintiff's injuries happened or whether other factors, like sudden stops or other driver's carelessness, played a role. This is a standard defense approach in multi-vehicle accidents, spreading the blame among multiple parties to reduce individual responsibility. From a legal standpoint, Ysabel's response sets up a debate over the percentage of fault. Under Utah's comparative negligence law, if a defendant is found to be less than 50% responsible, their payment can be reduced or eliminated proportionally. For example, if a jury decides Ysabel is 40% at fault and other drivers share the remaining 60%, damages would be split accordingly. Her response also suggests another angle, that the plaintiff may have already received benefits from her own insurance company, which could reduce any additional claim. So right now, you have an accident from 2 years ago, a new lawsuit, a plaintiff claiming serious injuries, and a young defendant from one of reality TV's most famous families. The stakes are extremely high without any insurance company listed. It appears that Ysabel herself, or possibly her family, could face a six-figure judgment since the plaintiff is claiming permanent injuries. A jury might feel sympathetic and award substantial damages if the case goes to trial. Currently, the case is in its early civil stages. The plaintiff's complaint presents her version of events, while Ysabel's response outlines her defenses. They will soon exchange discovery materials, accident reports, witness statements, and medical records to build a complete picture. Until then, we have two very different stories. One portrays Ysabel as the cause of a serious crash, and the other shows her as just one of many drivers caught in a dangerous situation on a problematic stretch of interstate. If you've been following this case, you know that the initial complaint painted a straightforward picture. Ysabel Brown rear-ended someone, triggered a domino effect, and injured the plaintiff. But once you examine Ysabel's actual court filings, the story becomes much more complex. In her official answer filed through her lawyers, Ysabel openly admits one basic fact: yes, she hit the car in front of her, but she strongly denies that this single impact makes her fully responsible for everything that happened afterward. She's essentially telling the court, I was in an accident, but I'm not the villain here. This is a classic defensive position in multi-car collisions, and it's especially important in Utah because of how comparative negligence works there. Utah follows a modified comparative fault system. That means a judge or jury can divide fault between everyone involved in an accident by percentages. If you're less than 50% at fault, you can still recover damages from others, but your award gets reduced by your percentage of fault. If you're 50% or more responsible, you're blocked from recovering and may be liable to others. In simple terms, Utah's system treats fault like dividing a pie, and everyone in the crash can end up responsible for a piece. Ysabel's lawyers are using that framework heavily. They're presenting the crash as a multi-party incident where several drivers, road conditions, and even the plaintiff's own actions contributed to what happened. Their filings point out that traffic was heavy and unpredictable, and that the plaintiff's car wasn't directly hit by Ysabel, but by another vehicle further down the chain. By highlighting each connection between Ysabel's car and the plaintiff's injuries, they're essentially trying to reduce her share of responsibility. The plaintiff's own insurance also plays a major role in this story. Utah has a no-fault personal injury protection (PIP) system. Every driver's insurance policy covers at least $3,000 in medical costs, regardless of who caused the accident. To step outside of PIP and file a full lawsuit for damages like pain and suffering, you have to meet a threshold, either medical bills above $3, 0, or certain serious injuries such as permanent disability or disfigurement. The plaintiff's complaint strongly suggests she's met or exceeded that threshold. Still, if she already received PIP benefits, those may reduce the total amount she can recover from Ysabel. It's also notable that both the complaint and answer avoid discussing insurance coverage directly. The lawsuit lists only Ysabel as the defendant with no insurance company named, but her attorney's filings subtly reference coverage and policy limits. This is probably strategic. If an insurance company denies coverage or disputes its duty to defend, Ysabel could face serious financial exposure. If coverage applies, though, the insurance company will pay the legal bills and potentially any settlement up to the policy limit. Either way, it's clear this isn't just a simple fender-bender lawsuit. It's a complicated mix of personal liability and insurance law. Another complication is the traffic ticket. Court records show Ysabel received a citation for following too closely, which is common in rear-end crashes. While a ticket doesn't prove civil liability by itself, it can be used as evidence to support the plaintiff's story. Her attorneys will likely highlight that ticket to argue she was negligent. Ysabel's lawyers, on the other hand, will downplay it as routine and note that the ticket doesn't assign fault for the entire chain reaction, only her initial impact. This isn't the first time a Brown family member has faced legal consequences from a traffic accident. Fans may remember Pete and Brown's accident in Nevada a few years back, where another driver alleged negligence and filed a claim. That case ended more quietly, but still raised questions because of the family's public profile. These past incidents create a background that the media can't ignore. When a reality TV family is involved, coverage increases, speculation intensifies, and even minor details become national gossip. Ysabel's defense strategy makes sense in this environment by sticking to the facts, acknowledging the rear-end collision but denying full fault, and invoking Utah's comparative negligence rules. She's positioning herself for either a reduced settlement or a more favorable jury verdict. If she can convince the court she's less than 50% responsible, she could dramatically reduce any payment she might owe or even avoid paying entirely. If other drivers bear most of the blame, all of this shows why the case is not as simple as she rear-ended someone. So she's guilty. Utah's laws allow for a detailed breakdown of fault, and Ysabel's legal team knows how to use that to her advantage. The plaintiff will try to simplify the story for a jury: one crash, one person to blame, permanent injury. The defense will try to complicate it: multiple drivers, poor road conditions, sudden stops, and insurance thresholds. This back and forth is exactly what makes civil lawsuits like this drag on for years. As of now, the court schedule shows ongoing discovery. Both sides are likely collecting police reports, dashcam footage, medical records, and witness statements to support their version of events. Expect a lot of finger-pointing and percentage calculations as they move toward trial or a settlement. And because the Browns are public figures, every filing becomes part of a broader media story, which can shape public opinion long before a jury ever hears the case. On August 20th, the plaintiff in this case made a bold legal move. She filed what's known as an offer of judgment against Ysabel Brown for $225,000. This isn't just a random number or a casual settlement offer in Utah. An offer of judgment is a formal tool built into the rules of civil procedure. It's designed to push both sides toward settlement and punish a party who refuses a fair deal. When a plaintiff files one, it signals they're confident their case is strong and they're daring the defendant to take their chances at trial. Here's how it works. The plaintiff's attorneys put their demand in writing, in this case, $225,000, and give the defendant 14 days to accept. If the defendant accepts, the case ends with a judgment entered for that amount. If the defendant rejects and then loses at trial for more than that figure, the defendant can be hit with additional costs, interest, and sometimes attorney's fees. It's like a legal double or nothing bet that dramatically raises the stakes. So why $225,000? That number likely reflects a combination of medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, and attorney's fees. Remember, the plaintiff is alleging injuries, some of which may be permanent. That's exactly the kind of language lawyers use to justify high-dollar damages. Permanent injuries translate into lifelong medical care, lost earning capacity, and non-economic damages like pain, emotional distress, and loss of enjoyment of life. Add in the attorney's contingency fees and costs of litigation, and suddenly a six-figure demand looks realistic from the plaintiff's perspective. Let's break down that figure further. In Utah, jury verdicts for serious but non-catastrophic car accident injuries can range anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 depending on medical evidence and fault percentages. A $225,000 offer sits right in the middle, high enough to scare a defendant, but not so high it looks like a money grab. It's also strategic. If Ysabel turns it down and a jury later awards even $226,000, the plaintiff can argue for costs and interest going back to the date of the offer, which can add tens of thousands more. The timeline here is crucial. Under Utah Rule of Civil Procedure 68, Ysabel has 14 days from service of the offer to accept. During that time, her lawyers will be analyzing numbers, weighing insurance coverage, and predicting what a jury might do. Discovery deadlines are already posted on the court schedule, document exchanges, depositions, and medical exams stretching into the next several months. Trial readiness is tentatively set for late next year, but that date can change depending on motions and settlement talks. If Ysabel rejects the offer and then loses at trial for more than $225,000, she risks paying not only the judgment, but also the plaintiff's post-offer costs that could include expert witness fees, additional attorney time, and statutory interest, which in Utah can run at several % annually in some cases. Those extras add up to another 5 or 6 figures, making a loss far more expensive than the original offer. This is the leverage built into Rule 68. It punishes defendants who gamble and lose. On the other hand, if Ysabel rejects and wins at trial, or the jury awards less than $225,000, she avoids those penalties and may even come out ahead. It's a high-stakes calculation. Plaintiffs file offers of judgment precisely to put pressure on defendants to settle, rather than risk trial. Defense attorneys sometimes call it a settlement trap, but from a plaintiff's point of view, it's an accountability tool. We've seen this play out in other Utah cases. In one 2022 Salt Lake County case, a plaintiff offered $175,000 before trial. The defendant refused. The jury awarded $200,000 and the court added over $40,000 in post-offer costs. In another case, a $300,000 offer was rejected and the jury came back at only $180,000. The plaintiff lost their leverage and no extra costs applied. These examples show why both sides carefully study the numbers and jury trends before making a decision. For Ysabel, this is especially sensitive because of the public scrutiny. If she accepts the offer, it could look like an admission of guilt or liability, even though legally it's not. If she refuses and loses big, the media headlines could be devastating. Her lawyers will be balancing the public relations aspect with the hard math of litigation risk. And lurking behind all of this is the insurance question. If her policy limit is, say, $100,000 or $200,000, the $225,000 figure was probably chosen to exceed that limit, forcing the insurance company to think hard about cutting a check or risking a bad faith claim later. Meanwhile, the court calendar continues. Discovery deadlines, depositions, and pretrial conferences keep the pressure up. The judge may also order mediation to push both sides toward settlement. Utah courts are busy, and judges generally prefer parties to resolve cases without trial when possible. But if neither side backs down, this case could head for a jury, a scenario that's risky for both, given the unpredictable nature of civil verdicts. The takeaway is that this $225,000 offer is more than just a number. It's a turning point. It shows the plaintiff's confidence, tests Ysabel's risk tolerance, and could dramatically affect how much money changes hands at the end of this lawsuit. For viewers, it's also the first concrete glimpse of the financial stakes. This isn't theoretical anymore. There's a hard dollar amount on the table and a clock ticking down. By laying out an offer of judgment this early, the plaintiff's team is signaling they're ready to go the distance. Ysabel's team must now decide: take a guaranteed settlement and end the case quietly, or gamble on Utah's comparative fault rules and hope a jury sees the crash their way. Either path carries risk: financial, legal, and reputational. And because this case involves a member of a famous reality TV family, every move will be watched, analyzed, and broadcast to fans and critics alike. It's one thing to be a young college student facing a lawsuit. It's another to be a young college student whose family's every move is televised and dissected online. Ysabel Brown isn't just another name on a court document. She's the daughter of one of reality TV's most famous polygamous families. That public connection changes everything from how headlines are written to how jurors might see her even before a verdict is reached. She's already facing trial in the court of public opinion. This reality TV background also creates a perception of deep pockets. Viewers of Sister Wives have watched Kody Brown, Christine, Janelle, and the others for years. Fans know the family negotiated TV contracts, wrote books, and monetized their drama. But none of that means Ysabel herself is wealthy. She's in college, building her own future, yet a plaintiff's legal team can't ignore the celebrity factor. Fame can make settlements harder to reach, numbers higher, and public scrutiny harsher. Plaintiffs know insurance adjusters and jurors may perceive more money on the defense side, simply because of the last name. Layered over that is Utah's driving culture. Comments from Salt Lake to St. George have flooded social media to say the same thing: we drive fast, we drive distracted, and the interstates are accident magnets. Highway pileups, chain reactions, and winter ice crashes are almost routine here. For the plaintiff, that's a credibility boost. The crash Ysabel was involved in doesn't sound extraordinary. It sounds like another day on I-15. For Ysabel, it's a reminder that she's caught in a system that sees these cases every single week. The plaintiff herself also seems credible. According to public records, she's college-educated, holds a respected professional job, and belongs to a stable community. She's not an obvious opportunist. Her attorneys frame her injuries as potentially life-altering, and nothing in her background suggests fabrication. That doesn't mean she'll win, but it does mean a jury might find her sympathetic. If she testifies about chronic pain, medical bills, and lost wages, the optics tilt in her favor. This all piles emotional and financial weight onto Ysabel. If her insurance policy limit is low, say $100,000 or $150, the $225,000 demand already exceeds it. That could leave her personally exposed for any amount above the policy in theory. Her insurance company could refuse to cover all damages or dispute liability, dragging her into a bad faith fight in practice. Insurance companies often settle within limits to avoid that fight. But there are no guarantees for a young adult with no significant personal assets. Even the possibility of a six-figure judgment is life-altering. So what happens next? There are a few possible paths. One is arbitration or mediation, which Utah courts encourage to reduce their caseload. A neutral mediator could push both sides toward a compromise. Perhaps something between $150,000 and $200,000 that closes the case quietly. Another possibility is that Ysabel's insurance company steps in with a policy limit settlement offer, accepting some liability but cutting losses before trial. The third option is a full-blown jury trial, which could be televised or at least heavily covered by the press, creating weeks of headlines about depositions, expert witnesses, and every tiny detail of the accident. Trials carry risk for both sides. Juries can surprise you. Sometimes they award far less than expected. Other times far more because Utah uses comparative negligence. Jurors could assign percentages of fault to multiple drivers. Ysabel might be found 60% at fault, another driver 30%, and the plaintiff herself 10%, for example. Each percentage directly affects how much money changes hands. This is why lawyers obsess over accident reconstruction, skid mark analysis, and black box data. A small shift in liability can save or cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Public scrutiny will follow every filing. YouTube channels, Reddit threads, and TikTok accounts are already dissecting the court documents. And every new document triggers speculation. For Ysabel, that's exhausting. She's not just defending herself legally, but also in the narrative. As people online build their own stories about what happened, who's guilty, and how much she should pay, her lawyers know that public chatter can affect potential jurors and shape media coverage, which is why both sides are careful with public statements. Ultimately, the fame factor is a double-edged sword. It could make the plaintiff overconfident, but it could also make a jury resentful of perceived wealth. It could push an insurance company to settle quickly or dig in and fight harder to avoid setting a precedent. And because Ysabel is part of a franchise still airing new episodes, the case itself could become material for reality TV storylines, which might shift public sympathy further for viewers. This is where the drama leaves the screen and enters real life. A single crash on a Salt Lake City interstate has now spiraled into a $225,000 showdown with national attention. The stakes aren't just legal, but personal. Ysabel's credit, future earnings, and emotional well-being are on the line for the plaintiff. It's about medical bills, accountability, and being made whole. For both, it's about navigating a system where fault, money, and public image collide. So that's where things stand right now. A young woman, a high-profile family, a serious lawsuit, and a ticking clock on a six-figure offer. Whether this ends in arbitration, a quiet settlement, or a public trial, the next few months will decide far more than just money. They'll determine how a reality TV family handles its most reality-bound crisis yet. If you've spent even a few minutes scrolling through social media lately, you've probably seen the headlines: $225,000 lawsuit nightmare for sister wife's daughter. Reality star faces massive court battle. And dozens of amateur legal takes dissecting every new filing. What started as a relatively quiet civil case has become the latest flashpoint in the sister wives universe. And the public reaction is as loud as ever. Fans on Reddit, Facebook, and TikTok are debating whether Ysabel is being unfairly dragged into the spotlight, or if she's facing real-world consequences of an admitted mistake on the highway. Some defend her youth and limited income. Others argue that public figures, even adjacent ones, can't expect privacy when lawsuits hit the six-figure mark. It's not just fans talking. The media framing of this case matters too. Headlines emphasize the $225,000 demand more than the legal nuances, which automatically tilts public perception toward massive lawsuit equals massive wrongdoing. For a 20-something college student trying to live outside the shadow of her famous parents, that framing is brutal. Every tweet or article headline can cement an image that's hard to shake, even if a court later finds her only partially liable or not liable at all. And that leads to the reputational cost. In a world where a quick Google search is standard for internships, scholarships, or future employers, A pending six-figure lawsuit linked to your name is not just gossip. It's a digital footprint, even if Ysabel wins or the case quietly settles. The search results will still tell a story: accident, lawsuit, $signs that can follow her for years, long after the cameras stop rolling on sister wives. Legally, the case could ripple outward too. If a public figure's family member can be dragged into a high-stakes civil suit and tried in the court of public opinion, it may encourage future plaintiffs to file similar claims when a big-name connection exists. Attorneys sometimes talk about the deep pocket effect, the assumption that someone connected to fame or money can pay more. Even if that's not true for Ysabel personally, it's an easy narrative for a jury to imagine. Family dynamics are also at play. Christine has spent years building a post-show brand around empowerment and independence. Kody's reputation is already battered by seasons of drama. This lawsuit puts a very different kind of spotlight on them: financial and legal vulnerability. Viewers will inevitably speculate whether the parents are stepping in to help cover legal costs, insurance gaps, or settlements. That scrutiny can spark new rumors, which in turn create new headlines, a feedback loop that keeps the story alive, even between court dates. And then there's the simple emotional toll. Imagine trying to balance college classes, part-time work, friendships, and a civil lawsuit demanding nearly $250,000. Even with lawyers handling filings, the stress is relentless. If her insurance coverage is thin or contested, she could be staring down personal liability at an age when most people are still learning to manage their first credit card. Looking ahead, the case could go several ways. A mediator or arbitrator might push both sides toward a compromise well below $225,000. The insurance company, if one steps in, might negotiate a settlement to cap its exposure. Or the whole thing could go to a full jury trial with cameras waiting outside the courthouse, and every motion dissected online. In any scenario, the financial and reputational stakes for Ysabel are far larger than for an average 20-something involved in a car accident. And that's the key takeaway. This isn't just about one crash or one lawsuit. It's about what happens when private mistakes collide with public lives. When a young adult tied to a famous family has her future recalibrated by a civil court docket. As the deadlines approach and the internet keeps buzzing, the question becomes less about what happened that day on the interstate, and more about how much this case will cost her in money, time, and public perception. So that's where things stand right now. What happens next? A quiet settlement, a drawn-out trial, or a surprise twist could define not just this case, but Ysabel's public narrative for years to come.